Good morning and welcome to the Design Leadership Podcast. Every day I speak with candidates looking to grow in the world of design, development and construction. I also speak with market leaders at the peak of their career who regularly talk about mentorship and helping the next generation of leaders in their own development. This podcast is for those people hoping to learn about what the next step in their career could look like. Today, I'm here with Kimberly Montague, President and CEO of Albert Kahn Associates. Kim is the ultimate boomerang, having spent 12 years with Albert Kahn around the turn of the millennia. She left Albert Kahn and spent time with HKS, Herman Miller and Planetree before returning to the position of President and CEO in March 2023. Kim, thanks so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. I always start these podcasts the same. I just want to touch on your background a little bit first, Kim. So if you could, tell me a little bit about how you got your start in design.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me today, Jake. I'm so pleased to be here with you. You know, I often tell the story that I started out as a young girl thinking that I was going to be a doctor. My grandmother always wanted to have a doctor in the family. And because I was good at science and math and, all those requirements, biology and chemistry and what have you in high school, I went to the University of Michigan thinking that I was going to study pre-med. And then, I got into the class that apparently is, I didn't know it at the time, but apparently it's a Weeder class for pre-med, and that's organic chemistry. And I remember sitting in that course and thinking to myself, boy, this is really difficult, and I do not understand a thing that they're talking about. And, failure's not an option. So maybe I should seriously consider dropping this class. So I dropped organic chemistry and got into a class called Understanding Architecture 201. And I remember sitting in that course thinking to myself, this is exactly what I need to be doing. It's this perfect balance between science and art and culture and humanities and community impact that I really felt was going to be where my sweet spot is in my career. And fast forward several years from then, I ended up being a teacher's assistant for that same course for 2 years with the professor that taught that course. So it turned out to be a good drop ad for me at University of Michigan. I completed my degree there in both my undergraduate Bachelor of Science as well as my master's, and now a licensed architect in Michigan as well as several other states around the U.S.
Got you. Very similar stories, because I think if my mum could have chosen me to be anything, it would have been a doctor, number one. It definitely would have been a lawyer, number two, as well. And obviously I went into recruitment, so very, very similar. Besides, obviously, that moment, that class, Architecture 201, I imagine that was a pivotal milestone in your career. Could you speak to some other key milestones in the early years of your career or key experiences that have helped shape your career path?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started my career in residential design. Most people don't know that. I was designing custom houses and condominiums, some light commercial, small banks, credit unions, those types of projects at first. And I remember speaking with the principal in a very small firm, two principals and myself. I was the only intern. I remember talking with him at one point in time about what I wanted to be when I grow up, quote unquote. And, he asked me some specific questions about, what do you like about architecture? What do you find the most impactful? And I said, the community engagement piece is really important to me. And I felt at that point in time that doing custom houses and apartment buildings was not, for me personally, it wasn't going to have that same kind of impact. And even though, as a leader in a firm now, I'm not sure I'd recommend that people leave my organization, but he actually encouraged me to look around at some other firms and maybe get some additional experience. So I decided to interview with several firms in the Detroit area. And I landed at Albert Kahn, and I very quickly got involved in healthcare design, which you can see that common thread from thinking I was going to be a doctor, maybe not wanting to be a doctor, but thinking I was going to be a doctor, and starting my journey in healthcare design. So I very quickly got extremely involved in healthcare design and all of the aspects of that particular market sector, the influence that it has on communities, how we can help communities heal, sort of the specific aspects of design. And I found myself getting involved in not only from an Albert Kahn perspective, but also some of the other organizations through the American Institute of Architects, some of the knowledge communities, getting involved with some of the other nonprofits, the Center for Health Design. Fast forward, while I was at Albert Kahn, I had the opportunity to work with one of our clients who was a member of a nonprofit organization called Planetree International. Mm-hmm. They focus on creating patient-centered healing environments, or person-centered healing environments is what their mission is now. And I actually left Albert Kahn for about almost 6 years and worked for Planetree, being a design advocate for them and being their person that was a translator, a facilitator, and really someone who was looking both at the physical manifestation as well as the operational and organizational aspects of those healthcare facilities, helping them translate it into tangible design improvements so that their environment reflected organizationally and operationally and from a mission standpoint how they were caring for patients and families and their communities. It was an unbelievable time in my career. I had the honor, the pleasure, and the privilege of engaging in, I think I counted it once, it's almost 1,000 focus groups around the world, listening to patients, listening to volunteers, caregivers, physicians, nurses, executives, veterans, all kinds of individuals that experience healthcare environments, and learning from them about how that healthcare environment influenced their care and influenced their healing process. I'm forever grateful that I had the privilege to be able to do that work and do that much listening around the world. US, Brazil, Netherlands, Japan. I really traveled, I traveled around working with all kinds of organizations. It was a phenomenal experience, and still influences me to this day in the practice and in what I do as an architect.
Interesting. I think, going back to the beginning of that point there, the two individuals who seem quite magnanimous in kind of saying, you need to follow perhaps a different path. As a recruiter, I take a lot of interest in those, not hiring managers, but those kind of manager conversations where, you work out what that path is. And I'm always, utmost respect for the hiring manager or the leader who will look at the scenario and say, if you leave, it might add more work to my plate, but that's the right move for you. And I think that probably speaks to the culture of those two individuals there. I imagine with a big shift there, and obviously, with a big shift in the university days, that there will be challenges that you will have faced throughout your career as well. And I think a big important factor of this is, understanding that leaders like yourself have gone through challenges and come out the other end. So I wonder if you could speak to some of the more significant challenges you faced in your career and how you overcame them, Kim.
Being in the design and construction industry, we face challenges almost cyclically, I don't know, on a cycle. I don't know if that's the right word, but we face challenges frequently as the economy shifts and moves. Mm-hmm. There are times in our careers that, say, for example, the industrial sector, which is booming right now for us at Albert Kahn. There's a lot of companies wanting to build manufacturing facilities of all types here in the United States, from battery manufacturers to new vehicle manufacturers to chip manufacturers. These kinds of facilities are really driving our business right now. The challenges that I faced in the past related to those cycles are around firms that tend to hire and fire. You know, they might hire a group of people or a team of individuals to come to their organization and then find that all of a sudden they don't have the work to support them. I was unfortunately a result of one of those, and I ended up, and not through, it wasn't through any fault of the leaders of the firm, quite honestly. It was a cycle that particular market sector was going through, and it was a client that said, you know, I'm sorry, I know I promised you the next 15 projects, but our strategy has taken us a different direction, and we now don't, you know, we won't need your firm to be able to complete those projects. And one of the things that, and so this was a leadership moment that the two principals of that particular firm, they had to come to grips with all of these very talented individuals. And I was one of them that they had to say, I'm sorry, but we don't have a job for you tomorrow. And it broke their hearts. It broke all of our hearts, because, you know, we became a very tight-knit team. And so this was a lesson that I learned in my future leadership opportunities. They took that moment to ask every one of us for our detailed resume, and they reached out to their colleagues and peers at other firms and said, hey, look, we have these 10 very talented individuals. Unfortunately, they won't have a job tomorrow, but please consider them for an opportunity at your firm. And to a person, all 10 of us were hired by, you know, what you might consider sometimes a competitor, but we were hired by their colleagues and peers. And I will forever, while it was a challenge, because one day I didn't have a job, fortunately 3 days later I did, but that was a teachable moment that I really absorbed. And I, as an emerging professional at that time, I'll never forget that moment where they helped each and every one of us find another job, even though they had to lay us off. It was a pretty special moment.
I think again, you know, that speaks to the personality and the culture of the individual. As a recruiter in this space, if that happens more and more often, obviously it might be more difficult for myself. But in you know, less of a selfish way, I think more leaders in the industry should look to do that sort of thing, especially in this cyclical, I think that is the word, you know, in this cyclical environment that we live in. And we're absolutely seeing industrial, semiconductor manufacturing, battery manufacturing absolutely pick up speed at the moment. So I would encourage other leaders in the market to do exactly what your leaders did there when there is periods of downturn. Moving on to leadership and firm growth, you know, as president, what principles, what strategies have been instrumental for you in driving firm growth, driving success, albeit in the last year? What is the plan for the future?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we are in the midst of our strategic plan. You know, every 5 years or so, firms, organizations go through their strategic planning process, and we are in the midst of ours right now. We have audacious goals for hiring. We have audacious goals for growing our firm. We also have very big goals and are challenging our current staff to think beyond perhaps the roles that they have, and help them think about how they might grow as a professional within our organization, instead of seeking, and I know this doesn't help your business, but instead of seeking employment somewhere else, you know, how could they offer their talents and skills internally? So I'm very bullish and very excited about our current employees, our current team members, and the expertise that they bring to our projects, the excitement that they have for our organization. So I'm really focusing our efforts on mentoring, coaching, training, creating those pathways for advancement, giving our team members the tools that they need, the support, the training that they need. And, you know, in some cases, if it's a shift in the kind of work that they're doing, you know, say, as an example, they're in a project architect role right now, but they look at our project management team and think, boy, that's something that I might be interested in doing. How can we help them get there? So that is part of our strategy, is to grow our staff, not only from externally, but internally as well, and giving them the appropriate tools, support, training, mentoring, coaching, guiding, all of the support that they might need to do that. That's a significant part of our strategic plan. We're also extremely focused on, I talked earlier about the nature of the industrial surge, if you will, in design and construction. We know because of those economic cycles that at some point in time, that's probably it's gonna lag. And we have not taken our foot off the gas of healthcare and healing environments and designing healthcare facilities. We have not taken our foot off the gas of other commercial projects and higher ed. Corporate environments are probably not one of the biggest areas of growth, but a lot of our existing clients are still looking to do renovations, updates, upgrades to their existing facility, be it from an infrastructure standpoint or, to an environment standpoint, and adaptive reuse. We are always, because of the thousands of Albert Kahn buildings around the globe, I'll say, we're always interested in adaptive reuse types of projects that might happen in not only Albert Kahn structures, but also other structures. And we consider that one of our gems, if you will. I've coined a phrase in our firm called gems and giants. And the gem projects are those projects that, while they might be small in size, either in physical size or structure, or even scope of services that we might be providing, those gems have a significant community impact and a significant impact on our staff, with the ability to be more creative in a more challenging, almost restrictive kind of project type, versus our giants. And those are the biggest projects that we have for some of those industrial manufacturers that I spoke of. Some of those are 1, 2, 2.5 million square feet of space. When you see the drone video, you can kind of get a feel for how big the project is, but then when you see it in scale with a person that literally looks like an ant standing next to the size of that structure, you realize how giant some of those projects are. So we balance our portfolio with mega projects, and also with those projects perhaps smaller in stature, but equally as impactful from a community standpoint.
And I think, we're just moving on to that next question. I think we're just starting to kind of segue into it. So, you kind of gone into the idea of, the multi-sector approach, the depth of experience within each of these sectors as well. And of course, 125 years of history. But what sets Albert Kahn apart from some of your competitors in the industry? Kind of digging into all of that a little bit more.
So I don't know if I shared this with you before when we were chatting, but we have a terminology that we use called an ex-con. And when I say ex-con, it's spelled K-A-H-N. And I'll say that is a social network of individuals that have worked at this organization and sometimes gone on to do other things, work for sometimes competing firms. Sometimes they end up working for some of the clients that we partner with. Sometimes they work for the construction managers that we partner with. But it's this incredible social network of people that are still connected to each other. And I had the pleasure of attending the ex-con holiday gathering a couple of years ago before I rejoined the firm. I'm an ex-con that is now what we call a recon. So I went from a con to an ex-con. Now I'm a recon. And sharing stories with some of those individuals. Some of them are retirees. Some of them, as I said, are emerging professionals that have gone on to work at other firms. But we all have this common bond and this, I'll say, almost familial relationship that we formed. And we keep in touch. It's intriguing. I've worked at a couple of other firms, And I don't know any other firm or organization that I've been directly involved in, and maybe there are others out there, but that has that collegiality amongst people that are currently working at the firm, have retired from the firm, work for a competing firm. It stymies me. And we hold that dear. We hold our legacy. We hold our training and professional development, and those that we've learned from, we hold that dear to us and carry that with us throughout our careers. It's really, it's very unique in what I have, what I've experienced. Again, I haven't worked at 12 firms, but I've worked at 4 different firms. And I can say that this culture is the most unique and the most familial in its expression.
But I think, I can concur here because, this is the second series of this podcast. We're now almost 25 episodes deep in total. And that is a question I've asked of every single person that I've spoken with. And there are some interesting answers. Largely those answers are fairly similar. It's the first time I've heard, that social network piece of ex-cons. I love that. I would have called them previously boomerangs, but I love the fact that you've got your own terminology there. And absolutely sets you apart from others that I've spoken with on these series. With that, I imagine that again that segues into this question of kind of fostering a culture here. But how do you foster that culture of innovation, creativity, collaboration amongst the organization, especially in this post-COVID modern day? How do you do that, Kim?
Another great question. One of the areas that I believe we excel is our ability to allow our emerging professionals to challenge themselves and do things outside of the norm. So sometimes you may have heard this in your previous conversations, when you work at a smaller firm, the two individuals that I worked with when I first started my career at the small residential firm, the joke was we all present to clients and we all take out the garbage and everything in between, right? We do the same thing here at Albert Kahn. There isn't anyone in this organization that isn't willing to take out the trash, help clean up when a client's coming in, go get, water for, your partners that happen to be in a meeting. It's not very hierarchical. And people sense that when they come into our organization that, the president's door, the chairman and CEO's door is always open. I had one of our interns who is very interested in healthcare design approach me after one of our company-wide meetings. And he said, I'd really like to learn more about healthcare. I don't know who to talk to about that. And I said, well, how about me? I said, I've been doing the healthcare design for the bulk of my career. And he said, you'll take time to meet with me? I said, sure. I said, my calendar and Outlook is open. You want to schedule 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour with me? You want to go have lunch or coffee? I'm more than happy to do that. And he said, and this was direct from him. He said, my previous organization, I felt like the president's door was always shut. And I had to ask permission of my supervisor to even have a conversation with the president. He said, that's very unique for this organization. So we promote that. We promote this idea that you can talk to anyone in this organization, and we demonstrate that. We walk that talk when we do interviews, in fact, I'll give you a specific example. Next week, we have 2 students from one of our local universities, Lawrence Technological University. 2 students on spring break are going to come to our office and shadow. And we've lined up a whole series of people for them to meet with and shadow during the day, from our director of project management to me, to one of our healthcare planners, to another project architect, to one of our engineers, so that they can experience our organization from the inside out. Not just sit in the architectural department and give them some drafting work to do, but let them experience the entire organization. And the dean, who's personal friends with a couple of our senior architects here, said that this was one of the best agendas that he's seen for students during spring break, that it's really giving them an immersive experience at a firm. We pride ourselves on that. We pride ourselves on the fact that it is immersive, that it's not a, you know, here's your computer, go do some drafting for us. Here's a toilet room detail, you know, go have fun with that. Here's some stair details, go have fun with those. We get people involved very early on in their career.
I think it's commendable on both sides. That it's commendable on your end for putting that agenda in place, and arguably even more commendable that they're choosing you guys on spring break when Florida's not, it's right down south, and they've got some places that they could go to.
It is warmer in Tampa than it is in Detroit this time of year. I'm just saying.
A little bit, just a little. Yeah, as I said, commendable for both parties there.
Yeah.
Moving on here to kind of the future of the industry, the future of Albert Kahn as well. We are starting to talk about it there with the cyclical environment, but how do you see the architecture and design industry evolving over the coming years, and how are you guys prepared for those changes?
So have you heard the initials AI lately? I'm sure you have.
It's all I hear.
It's all, you can't watch the nightly news without hearing someone talk about artificial intelligence and how it's going to change our world.
Mm-hmm.
A good friend of mine, another ex-con, by the way, who is a professor at University of Arizona and also the current president of AIA Arizona. He and I were having this discussion, and we have about the same experience level. We're just about the same age. And he asked me, he said, do you remember how nervous everyone was when CAD was first introduced into our industry? And, it was all over the news that, computers are going to do our design work and they won't need our brains and we should get out of the design industry. There was this fear amongst many in the industry that CAD was going to replace architects. I would argue that artificial intelligence, like those early stages of CAD, is another tool for us to develop. Mm-hmm. We need to embrace it. We are embracing it. We have just about monthly lunch and learn sessions where we talk about artificial intelligence and what's happening in the industry and how can we use this tool, where and when and how, and when do we need our brains, our collaboration, our ability to develop a relationship, our ability to challenge the norm and think beyond just what IBM Watson can dig up on the web. Mm-hmm. And utilize that, really dig into that creativity. I believe it's going to push us even further to be more creative, more engaged, and develop stronger relationships. I don't consider it a threat, but I do believe it's something that we need to pay very close attention to in how it not only influences our business, but our clients' businesses. Mm. So I think that's one area that and I'm sure there's others that have talked on their sessions with you about AI and how it's influencing their business too. I think the other thing that we are really challenged with is keeping people in the design industry. And it can be, when you start your career as an intern architect and working towards licensure, it can seem overwhelming and daunting, and why am I doing this? And it's not. Let's be honest. I'm sure your mom would be very pleased if you were a lawyer or a doctor, because the comparative salaries for a lawyer or physician are very different than it is for an architect. However, when we talk to candidates and when we talk internally about our future, we are constantly talking about engagement, collaboration, creativity, and invention. and how we can constantly challenge that status quo, all the while creating our environment, our culture that is focused on this sense of belonging and this idea that, you know, we all have a voice and we all come from different backgrounds and experiences and you know, cultural influences in how we do our work. I mean, I think this is true across all of our, you know, all of our industries. So we, you know, we use all of those leverage points to create that strategy for the future, you know, a more inclusive future, a more future focused on artificial intelligence and how that's going to change our business. And, you know, a future where we are thinking about the next thing and trying to uncover that invention or that innovation, using our curious minds to ask more questions than speak.
I think the AI piece, you're absolutely right, is something that I've touched on a few times in these series. That second point about keeping people in design, I think that's, you know, addressing the elephant in the room that perhaps not many people are willing to do so, because absolutely, especially since 2020, COVID, the whole world moving online for a period of time, I'm seeing more and more people than ever move out of this design industry into UX design, graphic design, opportunities that allow them to, you know, stay at home and kind of keep that remote capability. So absolutely engagement, collaboration. I think it's kind of addressing the immediate problem that we're finding of people leaving the industry. So interesting. As I said, you know,
Go ahead.
No, sorry, after you, Kim.
I was going to add, you know, we follow, our office is a hybrid work environment. We offer the ability for our employees to work at home when and how they need to. We encourage people to be here 3 days a week. And what we have found is that we follow the trends across the US. We have the highest occupancy in our office on Wednesdays. We have the lowest occupancy on Fridays, especially in the middle of July, when in Michigan, that's when we get our sunniest, warmest days, is in July. So we follow that trend that we've seen. What we have found and what we have heard from our employees is that they value the time that they're here in the office. And I'll be honest, a lot of our emerging professionals prefer to be here working alongside their other team members, especially their more experienced team members, because they're learning. And they like listening to some of those discussions with contractors, those challenges that, you know, that we have from our partners. From an architect standpoint, they like working hand in hand with the engineers. They learn more about how all of these pieces and parts of these complex things we call buildings go together. And we've heard that loud and clear from our employees, that they really do, they like being here. And let's be honest, some of them live in apartments, and, you know, the Wi-Fi is better here at the office than it sometimes is in their apartment building. So, you know, we like to create an environment where people want to be here. We haven't necessarily bribed people with free pizza or Taco Tuesday or what have you. Although we're not beyond offering cupcakes for a birthday celebration on a Wednesday afternoon either. We do that too. So, you know, it's a balance. It's always about a balance, right? I think if we don't provide our employees with flexibility, they will find an organization that will offer it to them. So we've accepted that, and you know, we've given everyone the tools that they need to do to still perform at their optimal level in the environment that they see fit.
I think what you're describing there, I would summarize as the idea of learning through osmosis, right? You know, sitting next to someone who's more experienced, more capable than yourself, and kind of just soaking all of that experience in. And as an example, you know, I spoke with 2 individuals just in the last couple of weeks, both graduated at pretty much the same time from that Clemson healthcare master's degree that, very specialized at Clemson. Both have the same amount of experience, very similar firms, one of which has moved into an associate position, and the other one is still waiting for that first promotion after about 4 or 5 years. And after digging a little bit further, the individual that is waiting for that promotion is in a fully remote position. And the individual who has been promoted twice already is sat in office 24/7 with the team. I don't want to sit on this end and encourage everyone to be in office 5 days a week, but in the early years of your career, that's invaluable, that idea of sitting next to someone and kind of soaking in all of their experience. So I'm a big believer in learning through osmosis is crucial.
Well, and to that open door policy that we talk about,
Mm.
you could call me on Teams, sure, but I'm going to go back to what I said earlier about developing relationships and go back to our ex-con culture, our ex-con recon con culture. Those relationships have developed and sustained themselves over the years. And it's only because we have all worked together side by side, learning from each other, learning what to do, sometimes what not to do, which can be just as important as what to do. You can get some of that through Teams, and I think that can be enhanced and supported through Teams. But I would argue, I'm an extrovert by nature anyway. I love going to conferences. I love going to networking sessions. I love meeting people, new people, and hearing their stories. So for me, it's easy, but I can empathize with introverts and people who do a lot of deep focused thinking that might need something quieter, and they don't need me, chit-chatting right next to their workspace, right? So I respect that. I respect that.
It sounds like it's the idea of supporting people in any way, shape, or fashion that is going to be right for them, right? Like you're saying there, it's not necessarily going to be right for every single person who is that introvert, deep thinker to be in office every single day, but allowing the support and the flexibility for them to progress in a way that works for them. And again,
that's an inclusive environment.
Exactly. And speaks to the culture as well. A lot of this does kind of circle back to the culture, very similar firms out there focusing in similar sectors, with obviously not many have as much in depth of experience as Albert Kahn with 125 years. But what sets you guys apart, a lot of it will be the culture piece there.
Actually, it's 129 years this year.
129 years. So 129 years of history. In this section, we are looking at the future as well. I understand that there will be some projects, some initiatives you might not be able to discuss, in which case, shoot me down if you need, but can you share any upcoming projects or Albert Kahn initiatives that you're particularly excited about in the future?
Well, we have, I mentioned our strategic planning effort. We're also in the midst of thinking about our brand. And that's a heavy lift. That's a very heavy lift. And for any of my colleagues and peers that out there that have gone through that, please give me a call. Because it's an awful lot of work, and I'd love to share some war stories on that. I will say, I can say that, as I mentioned previously, we are very focused on creating a balanced portfolio. So many of the projects that we're seeking in the markets that we have experience and we have past experience, both in healthcare and commercial, including higher ed and adaptive reuse, we are seeking opportunities and have won some recent opportunities in all of those market sectors to balance out the heavy load of our manufacturing and industrial, including the battery facilities. We've developed an exceptional expertise in both EV manufacturing and battery facilities. We have several of our engineers and architects on staff that are often requested to be on projects because of their expertise. And while I know from a design or creativity standpoint, that might not be the most exciting project for some, and I respect that, I will tell you that when I, as an architect and as someone who is deeply involved in healthcare, when I listen to that team present on the engineering and the ingenuity and how that building is designed to be able to accommodate that new process, and it's a new process, right? Battery manufacturing is a brand new process. The depth of expertise and knowledge that the engineers have applied to that is exceptional. And if you're interested in that kind of highly technical and really engineering heavy, and how the building design can support that highly technical process, you'll have great success and challenging projects of your own in, you know, that type of research and testing and manufacturing kind of environment. And I don't discount that as being any less creative. It probably will not win an AIA Design Award, but I guarantee you it will win an Engineering Society of Detroit Award because of its emphasis on that technical. It's a special, you know, architect and engineer that can put their brain into that kind of facility. So, not to belabor that, but you know, industrial is one of our areas of focus, but our goal is to create that balanced portfolio so that when we do see those shifts in the economic cycles, we're prepared. We were awarded, and it's about to start construction, a small clinic for an organization called Corktown Health, which is a healthcare organization that provides primary care for the LGBTQ plus community. Currently, right now in Southwest Detroit, they are this new project that we're working with. That team is in Hazel Park, which is in a suburb, kind of a little northwest and east, or excuse me, northeast of Detroit. And again, huge community impact, not a big footprint, but the kinds of services that organization provides to that community, actually to all. They consider themselves an inclusive healthcare provider. So you don't have to be a member of the LGBTQ plus community to be able to receive services there, but they do have services specifically focused for those in need. So we're exceptionally proud to be partnering with them on that particular project. We're about to kick off construction for it here within the next month. So we're thrilled to see that clinic come to life in Hazel Park, Michigan.
Would that represent one of the gems of Albert Kahn?
It does represent one of the gems of Albert Kahn. That is right. Using our healthcare expertise, our planning and healthcare design expertise, our focus on patient-centered and staff-supportive environments. We've applied that and in that way for this small project in Hazel Park, Michigan. It's about 19,000 square feet, about 19,000 square feet.
Lovely. Well, I look forward to seeing news and updates online of that project there. I also, in these discussions, I want to put the person behind the professional as well, Kim. So I wonder if you could outline, outside of your work life, what hobbies, what interests, do you have that contribute to your overall well-being and your creativity as an architect as well?
So once upon a time, I was an avid triathlete. I'm not as young as I used to be. So admittedly, some of the distances that I used to run, bike, and swim aren't quite as great as they used to be. But, even though I'm a swimmer by nature, I grew up swimming. I was on the swim team, swam all the way through high school and a little bit into college, mostly on clubs, but not competitively in college. I find I have my best aha moments for what I'm going to do as a professional when I'm either running, biking, or swimming. And it's that time for me to unplug. I turn off my phone during that. I put my phone on airplane mode during that time. Obviously, I don't carry my phone in the water. I don't take my phone in the pool. But I turn my phone on airplane mode so that I'm not disturbed by pop-up text messages, emails that come through, phone calls. That's my time. That's my time to focus. And that is my time to make certain that I'm getting the adequate relaxation, rest, or focus time that I need. In the wintertime, I find myself on my Peloton more than I do outside. You know, I can't remember how many times I've said I live in Michigan, but I live in Michigan. Biking in Michigan is not, in the wintertime, is not really a preferred sport for me. But I do make certain that I get that time. I take my Sunday mornings very seriously. Sunday mornings for me are coffee, newspaper, and yes, sometimes I still get the hard copy New York Times or Detroit Free Press, music, yoga. That's a very special time for me and my husband. We take Sunday mornings very seriously. That's our time to let go of the previous week, and then at the end of Sunday, set ourselves up for success in the coming week. So Sundays are pretty special in our house. A little bit of meditation, a little bit of prayer, you know, it's a time to reset.
I mean, I'm a big believer in that as well, that R&R, especially after, you know, a hard week's work. My Sundays aren't exactly the same as yours, but I place the same importance. Mine start with the diner right down the road every Sunday morning. I get the full big omelette with the pancakes, and without a Sunday pancake, I'm not sure how I would start Monday, to be honest.
Yeah. Mine's usually coffee and a frittata.
So similar, not the same.
Right.
I wonder, in the same vein here, I wonder if you could share some lasting memory or, something along those lines that has impacted your career from your personal life, or vice versa, something from your personal life that has impacted your career.
Very significant event, actually, and it'll be 24 years on March the 24th. Whoa, auspicious numbers. My mother passed away from ovarian cancer on that day. So 24 years ago, and I will never forget this, Jake. My brother and I were in the ICU with my mom, and it was she had been taken to the emergency room. She was not doing well after chemotherapy, and we sat in that room in the ICU with her. And I remember having a lot of conversations and talking to her and talking to each other. And as you can imagine, very stressful time. But I remember sitting there thinking to myself, and there was one event that happened. We were sitting on folding chairs, metal folding chairs. My mother is actively dying. There were fluorescent lights above our heads. There was this awful, cold tile, chipped floor. The temperature in the room was horrible. It's freezing. The staff were arguing amongst themselves about the monitors and not being able to, get her heartbeat, and, what about this? And so they were arguing amongst each other. And I remember I looked at my brother and I turned to the staff and I said, "You need to leave now." And they looked at me with this, "What do you mean? We're caring for your mom." And I said, "She's dying. Leave us be." But all I could think about later, Jake, was that not only the interactions in that room, but all I could think about was, here I am at one of the most, to this day, stressful points in my life. And this environment had zero support for me and my brother. The staff wasn't being very kind. We were physically uncomfortable. There was nothing that said to me, this is a respectful environment to care for these people in that moment. And that was a turning point for me. I was beyond that, I'm getting choked up just even talking about it right now. That led me to be a better healthcare architect. That led me to think about the voices and listen more clearly to how care is provided and how does that environment support that kind of care. So that day, one other thing I remember about that day when my brother and I left, you know, there were people coming and going from the hospital and the sun was shining. It was a, you know, cold March day, but the sun was out. And I remember I turned to him and I said, nobody else here knows that our mom just died. And that, in that moment, I thought, I need to be an advocate. I need to bring a voice to those that are challenged. And in my way, you know, I'm an architect. I'm not a physician. I'm not, you know, I didn't cure cancer. It still needs to be cured, by the way. But that was a pivotal moment for me in my career that you know, I'll never forget that day. Never forget that day, no matter how much time goes by.
I think it's interesting. It's sad, but it's interesting. You know, when I speak with healthcare architects, one of the questions that I'm always very interested to learn about is why healthcare. You know, why that space? Did they fall into it? Was there a passion? And it's more often than not a personal circumstance, a personal story like that's
Right.
driven them to healthcare architecture. I guess the only silver lining from that story, Kim, is 24 years on. Hopefully, we've got leaders like yourself in the industry who have recognized that, you know, 20 years ago, these facilities are not what they needed to be, both for, you know, clinical care, but our mental care as well, of the family, of the patient, the people around the patient.
Yeah,
So I
it
totally
has
get it.
evolved. It has evolved, and there are so many facilities across the country now that not only from a, you know, a caregiver, a physician, nurse, therapist, pharmacist standpoint have phenomenal environments for, you know, those that provide the care, but also those supportive and caring and compassionate spaces for the family members, for the volunteers and others in the community. I mean, we have come a long way in 24 years. We still have some work to do, and that's okay. I'm all for continuous improvement. But yeah, things have definitely improved. In that particular hospital where my mom was cared for has gone through several renovations and has since become an exemplar in our community. So I'm happy to say that things have really changed since that awful day in my life.
Well, I am interested, you know, I'm not an architect, I'm not a designer, I can't necessarily picture it, but I'm very interested what that next 24 years is going to look like. You said there, and I agree with you, you know, there is room for improvement. What does that improvement look like? I look at some of these facilities now and think it looks like almost a dystopian future, how technologically advanced it is. I wonder what the next 25 years looks like and where we could get to. As a final thought, Kim, you know, we're going to share, for those still listening to this point, we're going to share this podcast. We're going to share your LinkedIn profile. I wonder whether you can kind of give an insight of where our listeners can connect with you, learn more about Albert Kahn, and where we can direct them.
Yeah, of course. So we have our home office here, our corporate office in Detroit, Michigan. We do look for people who want to be part of the Renaissance of Detroit. And if you haven't been to Detroit, I highly encourage you to come and check us out, but come in July. I say that tongue in cheek because I still live here in the wintertime, but we are part of the Renaissance of the city. As I said, if you haven't been here, our Detroit Lions almost made it. Oh my goodness, we almost made it. We are hosting the NFL draft here in a couple of months, but so our home office is here. We do have several employees that are located remotely, and we support them and their efforts. Our website is www.albertkahn.com. If you want to check us out there, We were in this last year, we were awarded a top workplace by the Detroit Free Press. So we were number, I don't remember what our ranking was, but we were in the top 100 of top workplaces here in the metropolitan Detroit area. We're exceptionally proud of that. And that was not from a marketing submission, but that was from our employees who said that they feel as if they are offered professional satisfaction and benefits and all the great things that employees say about us. So we're exceptionally proud of that. We do a lot of work in different kinds of market sectors, as I've mentioned before, commercial, higher ed, corporate office, small projects, adaptive reuse, healthcare, industrial, research and testing, and some other emerging markets in infrastructure and, you know, more IT and data center focused as well. So lots to choose from when you work at Albert Kahn. We have a very flat organization, as I've talked about. Our leadership is accessible, and you know, we don't live in ivory towers. We have an open door policy, and you know, welcome employees to invite us to lunch whenever they want to have us around. You know, so we engage in a variety of ways. We do a lot of fun things too. We have picnics and, you know, fancy dinners out, and, you know, ad hoc happy hours at an Albert Kahn location. And, you know, we do all kinds of fun things that I'm sure a lot of other firms do as well. But we actually enjoy being together, which is a wonderful thing.
I think that's important, right? We spend at least 8 hours of our day with the people that we work with, right? So you've got to enjoy the company of those people. And I've never been to Michigan, but I will definitely time it with the summer, maybe a happy hour, maybe a picnic, and come and see you guys.
Come visit us.
Absolutely. I think as we come to the end of this podcast episode, Kim, we're going to share your LinkedIn profile. We're going to share the Albert Kahn website. As we've heard, you know, from yourself here, Albert Kahn, multi-sector focus, working across, you know, different sectors. So anyone who's got that overlap, I would encourage that you go ahead and connect with Kim. But in particular, obviously, anyone who has that industrial background that we've been talking about, manufacturing, EV battery manufacturing, I'd encourage you to go and connect with Kim, at least, as you might have something interesting to discuss. So today, I really appreciate you joining with me here, Kim, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
All right. Thank you so much, Jake.
Thank you.